move that off
Don't
a
get
little
too
bit.
excited then.
Well,
I like
occasionally I get excited.
I like it when people get excited.
You gotta be emotional, man. People like emotion.
Yeah, but FC Dallas, that emotion is usually disappointment.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90. Now, Soccer90.com is, of course, your source for all FC Dallas, U.S. national team, Go USA, in international club and national team gear. But right now, very special just for you, the limited edition Pepi El Tren scarves are now in stock. And you Third Degree listeners, of course, get your 25% off your purchase. Just use the code Third Degree at checkout at Soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, I'm Peter, and it's just the three of us. First up, Dan Crooke. Happy birthday again, Dan.
Thanks. It's now been nearly a month.
I don't feel like I didn't buy you anything for your birthday, so just continuing to wish you happy birthday feels like I owe it to you.
Just your presence, your living and breathing is more than enough.
Is a gift.
It is.
That's what they call it, a present.
It's the gift that keeps on being regifted.
Regifted. That's right. I'm the fruitcake of birthday gifts.
No, fruitcake shit. You're not fruitcake.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And looky there, that's our hero, your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, the editor and founder of ThirdDegree.net, about to celebrate its 25th anniversary. Buzz?
Oh, 24th birthday. It's this month right now. Yeah. Because this next season will be our 24th season. We're 2 seasons behind MLS.
Well, that's Buzz Carrick. Hello, Buzz. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. I do not think you're shit either.
Man, I am feeling good about myself today.
Yeah.
This is a winning episode of the podcast. Wow, guys. Well, it's been a down, quiet week for all things Football Club Dallas, except for the fact that Ricardo Pepi started in the crucial game against Costa Rica last night. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, in their 2-1 win over the Costa Ricans in Columbus. And I was going to wonder if either one of you thought Pepi had a particularly good game.
Well, I'll go first, and I'll say not particularly good, but I'm not going to say bad either. I actually was not surprised he started because, he did have 2 goals and lots of people thought he would start the game before. But the more I read about what people were expecting about the opponent, and the more I thought about, they were coming into Columbus and they're more likely going to be in a low block, playing what is probably supposed to be a higher tier opponent. I thought there was a good chance Pepi wouldn't start because breaking down a low block is not necessarily his specialty. To break down a high block, you need to be able to make quick, intricate passing movements, or you just have to put ball after ball after ball from the box and hope you get lucky. Well, the U.S. doesn't really do that second one. They do the first one. So that's not really Pepi's vibe. Pepi scores when you get service into him at his feet or with his head. So I would not have been at all shocked if he had not started. So it was no surprise, therefore, that when they did play relatively large amounts of low block, that he wasn't really very effective.
Dan, you're our resident unbiased, neutral viewer. Since you're, from another country, did Pepi play well for the United States last night?
He did what he was asked. He did what was asked of him. I didn't see the entire first half, but second half certainly he was getting in great positions, which is his strength. But balls just weren't getting to him. He was coming out wide, was dropping deep for balls, but like Buzz says, he's not a breakdown, a low block. He's kind of guy. He's a finisher. It's strange. You almost wonder if Berhalter didn't start Zardes because people just expected that being back at Columbus. But You almost would have rather them start Pepi in the previous game instead of resting him for most of it and trying to make him go nearly the full 90 in a game that wasn't necessarily suited to him.
Yeah, it's interesting because Pepi's performance in the Jamaica game. I recorded an episode of kind of post World Cup window with Andy for the kick around yesterday, and in that we were discussing Pepi specifically, and Andy was frustrated with the fact that he felt like his observation is that there were too many people that clearly were bypassing Ricardo as an option as Ricardo was posting up and playing with his back to goal. And trying to feed him the ball, and he felt like people were not doing that when he was clearly available to do it. And I was recalling maybe the one time where they did, where Dest played it to Pepi. Pepi played this deft little touch into open space deep that Weah ran onto that created an opportunity. And I do wonder if the rest of the team is hesitant to play Pepi in that style just because he's an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, listen, post-up play is definitely historically a little bit of a weak point, but he's been working on it, and we have noticed incidences where he's gotten better at it. He seems to be better at it when he's near midfield and he has a little more space to work with. I did remember a couple of instances where somebody tried to play him a little bit of a post-up, and he muffed the touch and was not able to lay it off. So you're right, as an 18-year-old kid, and this is a game where you could use a little post-up play, it was not optimum. So, listen, we love Ricardo Pepi. That game, I'm not going to go so far as to say it was bad. I'm just, like Dan said, I thought he did good work and just didn't get enough of the ball. But I would have expected him to not get enough of the ball. And a couple of his skill sets that would help there. Like in that kind of game, you almost could say, and Dallas did this a couple times, you could almost say Frank O'Hara's skill set would work better. Now, obviously that's a silly example because he's not an American, but the point is that robust frame that Pepi doesn't have yet, that ability to really hold off a big, strong defender, which Pepi doesn't have yet, is a little bit of kind of detriment to that style that you're going to need in that game. And so it's not surprising to me at all that particularly those guys are not going to go with that kind of play. Aronson is a guy who's going to want to dribble people, and get into the box, and so is Weah. So although he does it a little more wider than Aronson does, but it's not necessarily optimal setup to take advantage of Pepi and the optimal game plan to take advantage of Pepi. So it, again, doesn't surprise me if people didn't want to post up play to him. It's not his strong suit.
I also mentioned this in the Kick Around podcast, which was in the aftermath of the Panama game. One of my favorite soccer newsletter guys, a guy named John Mueller, wrote a tweet that was super controversial that just said, I think Zardes played better than Pepi. Now, remember, Pepi scored 2 goals in that game. Zardes didn't. And, in fact, Zardes muffed a couple of opportunities. And subsequently after that, not only did he get a lot of shit for saying that, he then wrote a newsletter specifically outlining why he felt like Giassi had played in that game better than Ricardo. Dan or Buzz, I don't know if either one of you have gotten a chance to read it. It's really, really good. John's a fantastic writer. I don't know if you agree or disagree with it, but it essentially comes down to just that Zardes is better at movement and positioning and spacing. Pepi is better at finishing. And at the end of the day, both of those things are important. And the hope is that Pepi can pick up on some of the things that Giassi is already good at.
I understood his premise, and I actually did a burn about the idea because I will agree that Zardes is a much more complete player than Pepi. He's much more experienced. He's much more experienced internationally. His strong suits are his movement. That's definitely what he's particularly good at. Pepi is also actually really good at movement. Now, with the national team, he hasn't been doing that. But you watch him play with FC Dallas, and he does come out wide a little bit. He does pull the defenses apart with his movement and create space for Jesus underneath him. Now, in the U.S. system, 4-3-3, there is no underneath player. So it's possible that that's affecting the amount of movement he's doing. So they're totally stylistically different players. In the end, however, while we often talk about the fact that you can analyze a game, you have to take away the goals. That's definitely true most of the time. But when you're talking about a pure striker, the whole point is, did he score or not? And that comes down to your basic eye test sort of elements. And so I would possibly even agree with you that maybe Pepi Zardes played better theoretically, like with what you want and want, but Pepi scored twice. And that's the thing. Now, I'm going to use this MLS stat, for example, here, and I'm going to give you my point. Pepi this season has 102 touches in the opponent's penalty area. All season, 102. 31 shots on target from those 102 touches. 13 goals from 31 shots on target. So that's literally half of his shots on target are going in. So talk all you want about movement. And again, I tell the story about Oscar all the time, saying you got to throw out the goals when you're analyzing the level of play and how the whole team did and all these concepts, right? In the end, as the 9, sure, let's talk about all the good qualities, but goal scoring is 1,000% more important than all the rest of the metrics when it comes to the 9. So, okay, I hear you and I agree with you, but you're wrong. Yes, he did play better in all the mechanics of the game, but Pepi scored twice and Zardes did not. So it doesn't matter that, like, he had a great example of like how Zardes created an opportunity. Doesn't matter if you didn't score it, right?
Right.
Coleman, right? Greatest player we've ever seen, except for the part where you put the ball in the back of the net. That's all that matters. And I don't care if you do not. Franco Jara is horrible. If he scored 15 goals, I would not care that he was horrible.
Oh, you mean Cobra?
Well, no, I said if. Jara. Yeah. Jara, Cobra, whatever. You can be Roland Lamont can be terrible and score a couple of goals, and so he gets to keep playing. But he was too streaky and too inconsistent and hurt the team, and he's way further back down the field. We're talking about 9s, right?
Okay. Because that's what I was going to bring up. I was going to bring up the Javier Obreon and Lamont as examples of guys who are putting the ball in the back of the net, but all we do is sit here and bitch about them.
Well, we do, but then when he gets 2, we say, okay, if you get 2, you get to keep going, right? It's if you do it every game, that's fine, but they don't do it every game. They have big, huge gaps in their resume, and then games where they're hurting the team massively. Neither Pepi nor Zardes is hurting the team. That's definitely not happening. So if you're going to go head-to-head direct comparison, you get, in the end, you can throw out all the rest because Pepi scored twice and Zardes doesn't. So at the national team level, in MLS, that's a different animal. I mean, you might be able to convince me to take Zardes over Pepi in MLS because he's in the long run, he's going to be cheaper and I can keep him, and he's a productive scorer. That's a totally different argument.
All right, Dan, is the debate of goal scoring versus the creation of goal scoring opportunities just a bunch of crap to talk about on podcasts and write in newsletters?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a striker is a high paid position for a reason. That reason is goals. No, I didn't watch the Jamaica game. And so I didn't bother reading that because, it just kind of the whole argument smacked to that whole perfect Paxton crap from a couple years ago of, he made 8 of 9 passes and they're all in the opposition half. But when you take in the context of the game against Seattle, they're 3-0 down in the last 10 minutes. Every one of those passes was a check pass backwards. It's like we always go a little bit, not skeptical, but we always go a little bit cautious on numbers like XG and stuff like that because you can paint a picture any way you want it. You can always find a number to back up any argument, and it's the thing I like about when Buzz does the breakdowns is he'll do the eye test and then do the numbers back it up because realistically you can find numbers to back up your opinion. But if you go in numbers first, I mean, I could tell you that Franco Jara is the greatest player to ever play for FC Dallas based on some of his numbers, I'm sure.
Bollocks!
Yeah, don't forget, too, that Pepi's 18. We should expect Zardes to be a better player than him, other than the ball in the back of the net part. And that, in the end, that's why people want to buy Pepi probably for $15 million, and no one wants to buy Zardes that I know of. Right? I mean, think about it that way. Sometimes we have these debates, and I'm like, listen, there's a couple dudes on a podcast who think one guy's better than the other. What does Bayern Munich or Ajax or whatever else think? Well, they all want Pepi, and they don't want Zardes.
Right.
So, it's, Pepi doesn't move good off the ball. The Bayern's like, we don't
totally
care.
Fair.
Yeah.
Now, Buzz, in the Discord, I made a comment of how excited I am over the idea, the premise of watching Ricardo Pepi start for the USA on November the 12th in Cincinnati versus Mexico. And you kind of poo-pooed that idea because you're worried about pairing him, because my statement was I'm excited to see him start in that game with Christian Pulisic on one side and Giovanni Reyna on the other, replacing who we had in this game, which was Weah on one side and Aronson on the other, and you kind of poo-pooed that idea.
Well, it comes back to the same general concept of the kind of player Pepi is. Listen, I want to see him play against Mexico. I mean, Pepi is probably chomping at the bit to play against Mexico, and vice versa. Oh, my gosh. But listen, go back to the U17 World Cup, and again, Pepi's not the same player now as he was then, and neither is Gio Reyna. But stylistically, Gio Reyna is the same guy, and the Griffin Yao was the other winger on that team. And both of those guys are just like Pulisic. They're guys that dribble at you, break down a couple of dudes, and get shots off. They are not pass-slinging, assist-creating, assist guys. They're guys that want to do their thing. So, stylistically, Pepi, we've talked about this multiple times here. Pepi is a guy that needs service to really thrive. He works better with Jesus underneath him, getting him balls coming in from the wing. That's his peak. So that's my worry, is like if you pair him with Pulisic and Reyna, that it's not necessarily going to be good. That like it'll look like the U17 Worlds where he literally had 5 touches in some of those games, right? And it's like, and none of them were in the box. Now, if you get Pepi 5 touches in the box against Mexico, he probably is going to get a goal. But I'm worried that he would not get those 5 touches in the box against Mexico. That you would get Pulisic and Reyna blasting from 18, 20 yards all the time, and Pepi might get 1 touch in the box and against Mexico, who's a really good team. And, you know, that's my worry. And so I would not assume that a coach would say, Pepi is my starter for sure against Mexico, particularly after you just watched the game you watched. Now, Mexico's not going to low block. But if you have guys that aren't willing to play the ball in to Pepi, you know, now Weston will do that. Musa seems to be willing to do that. Aronson seems to be willing to do that. You know, Will Pulisic and Reyna, I don't know. He's never played with them. Stylistically, they don't really do that. So, you know, we'll see.
Well, I get where you're coming from. And maybe it's a tactical adjustment on Berhalter's part. Again, I think I've talked about this in other places. I still think he's overcomplicating things for this team.
Sure.
That another coach would come in here and just really simplify things, and they may not be as pretty to watch, but they'd probably play really well and win games more clearly. But I am eager to. I hope Pepi does get to start for the United States.
Me too. But think about this: like, how much confidence and faith does Berhalter have in Zardes? You know, he's coached him before. He's been with him a lot more than Pepi has. Pepi's 18. Zardes is deep in his career professional. You're playing Mexico. Guys revert under stress. High-quality teams, guys revert to older and not kids a lot of times.
But he did. But last night, I mean, good Lord, look at the lineup he threw out there last night in a critical game. I didn't think it was a must-win, but holy crap, I heard must-win a lot leading up to the game last night, and he threw Chris Richards as a center back in his first World Cup qualifier.
That really shocked me,
and who, by the way, that whole opening goal sequence starts because Richard completely goofs up his clearance of that ball, that initial play. That whole thing starts with him, by the way. And then, you know, you got Pepi, an 18-year-old, at the front of the line, so... He at least will do it, right?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that I think Pepi should not start. Let me be clear on that, right? I'm just laying out their ideas in my head as to why Berhalter might look the other way. Yeah. You know, just to prepare people for the idea that it might not be Pepi. You know, coaches get these thoughts in their heads and they have these feelings about players, and Pepi is. You know, was hot, but then this last game didn't really work against Costa Rica, maybe. So maybe he's carrying that over. It is a month from now. Who knows who's healthy and who's hot? I'm just saying that, like, I think Pepi, you cannot yet assume that he's a dead solid lock to start. He's not Pulisic, right? He's an 18-year-old kid who's gotten a couple of goals in 4 games. That's totally different level in a coach's mind of, is he the man yet? No, not yet.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
All right, now this is not a U.S. men's national team podcast. This is an FC Dallas focused podcast. But I am going to ask Dan, again, as our neutral Dan, I'm so sorry, English observer.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. My apologies. Buzz somewhat controversially tweeted after the game that he thought Weston McKennie was his man of the match. Agree or disagree?
Agree. And I'm baffled that people thought Serginho Dest was anywhere close to it.
Well, if you're trying to compare those two, I would agree with you. I had Tyler Adams as my man of the match. Buzz, you admitted you had some bias there.
Well, I do, but that part was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, and people took it seriously. Certainly, Peter, Adams is a terrific choice, and so was Musa. The entire midfield was good. You can make a case where there was a whole bunch of guys in that game that could have been man of the match. I picked Weston, and I will tell you why if you would like me to.
Well, of course.
Okay. So the people that complain about Weston complain about his 6 turnovers. Also not keeping in mind that he had 119 touches, which is the most on the team. Is it not inherently true that if you have the most touches on a team, that you're probably going to have the most turnovers? Also, you can't just throw out a 1 turnover stat without telling me where they are on the field. Are all 6 of them in the box on the other end trying to attack when you got 4 defenders closing you down? Are they all in your box when they give up goals? None of his turnovers resulted in bad moments. What I saw when I watched that game, and Musa started against
I think the slide tackle that did not get called for a penalty starts with Weston misplaying a ball back towards the box.
Sure, but it didn't. I'm not saying that turnovers are not a big deal. I'm just saying that you have to have context for all of them. Did he have a bad moment or two? Yes, but let me get through the thing. The previous game, Musa played, but Adams and Weston did not. And those 2 guys, both awesome, both came in. Adams, for sure, I'm with you. He's a dead solid lock starter. Totally agree. But when I watch that game, I don't watch tiny little count the turnover kind of details. I watch the macro. And when I watch Weston, I see the same mentality that I like. Well, you want to compare the scenario I thought of was Landon Donovan versus Dempsey. Landon Donovan is more talented player, but if I got to win one game, I'm picking Dempsey. To me, Weston has that Dempsey mentality. I watch the game, and his mind is above the game. His mentality is above the game. He's making passes with a weight and a crispness that are above everyone else in that game. He's going not just box to box. He's going end line to end line and sideline to sideline. His range is immense. The ground he's covering is immense. He has the most touches in the team. He's clearly driving the whole engine. And in the end, the mentality of him and Adams that were missing from the previous game, to me, is the big difference, all right? Weston McKennie, even though he has some sloppiness, there's a reason why one of the biggest clubs in the world has paid big money for him, just like there's a reason why one of the big clubs in the world has picked even more money for Pulisic. Those guys have the ability to play way above this level. And I thought it was clear that he had that. And it was almost like he was like, Costa Rica, just pass it around. I'm going to do this to a couple guys, and we're going to win this game. And because this team sucks, right? So, how many times have we seen the United States roll through CONCACAF? Now, if you're too young, you don't remember this. You roll through CONCACAF, and then you get to the World Cup, and the play goes up a level, and nobody in the U.S. team can go up a level. Well, now we have guys like Pulisic and McKennie and dudes like that who play above this level all the time. And so it looked clear to me that he was just like a player on the field that was so far beyond the game that he was like, I'm barely even trying. And yet he still had the mentality to grab the game and hold the game. So to me, that's why he jumped out at me as oh my gosh, this kid. So that's why he was my man of the match.
No, and I think that's a fair shout and all of a good argument because I agree. I think Weston McKennie is tremendous. I'm still mad at him about the previous window and his behavioral issues. I'm still very bothered and upset by that, but I think he went a long way this particular window in overcoming that. He does have a direct, immediate effect on this team in going forward. And every time we worry about players receiving the ball in the opponent's half, defending half the field and not going at goal, Weston is that guy we're all hoping does that. I mean, Tyler does it too, and I thought Musa was really good as well.
Oh, yeah.
There was so much about that game last night, despite the fact that they dominated the game in almost every aspect you could think of, other than just scoring a shit ton of goals. And I thought that was the real take. That was, for me, the most exciting part of the game, is a lot of that promise. So hopefully we'll see more of that in the next one.
That midfield three is amazing. They just dominated the game. And all three of those guys are still so young and have so much growth room and so much ceiling above where they are now. That's the part that just lights me up. And like I said, you could have picked Adams, you could have picked Musa. They were both phenomenal players too. There are other guys that have that mentality that Weston has, like Kellen Acosta has that mentality too, but Weston has the talent on top of it. And that's the difference between him and Acosta, for example. It's like Weston's got so much more talent on top. Not that we don't love Kellen Acosta, but
Yeah, it was interesting, as that was, that in many ways was kind of a quasi U.S. under-23 team versus Costa Rica's over-30 team.
Yeah, what was the stat about the oldest U.S. player was younger than the youngest Costa Rican player?
The other way around.
Yeah, the oldest Costa Rican player.
Yeah.
Or the youngest.
No, I said it right.
Oldest. Yeah, you said it right. The oldest United States player was younger than the youngest Costa Rican player. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah, the goalkeeper was 26 and the youngest Costa Rican was 27.
Ridiculous. All right.
Funny
and then,
part was Brian Ruiz is twice Pepi's age.
And then they subbed on Sabarillo, who I swear
Retired
I watched
4 years ago, right?
play in an MLS game back in 2007 or something. It was so weird to see him subbed on as a late substitution. That was so bizarre. And just sticking to our FC Dallas Guns, we got to see Chris Richards, who, by the way, I had not seen on camera. It must be years since I've seen him last, because that kid went from teenager to man real fast. He looks very different and way more grown up than the last time I saw him.
Yeah, he's filled in and he's stronger and he's positionally much better. He still has a lot of work to do in his game too, but you could see, other than some let-off moments, you could see his passing ability and his ball handling skills, which is why people think, he's got tremendous upside. I think we'll see a lot of him in the future. I wouldn't have said this was like a great game from him, but he was one of the highest passing percentage players on the team for a young center back. That's pretty remarkable,
All right, so the U.S. ends up winning that game. They get 6 points from the window. They sit in second place behind Mexico. Everything's okay, people. Just take it easy. It doesn't get easier or better from here. You're going to chew more fingernails before this is all over, but so far, so good. As for other internationals with Football Club Dallas, Brian Acosta is with Honduras, and Shun is with Hungary. We actually saw the latter start for his nation at Wembley, and I watched him nutmeg Phil Foden. I think that was pretty much the highlight of his game, though.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet. It's a little bit disappointing. I was hoping to see some more out of him.
I didn't watch that game, so I don't have anything to contribute.
And there's game review by Dan Crooke.
Yeah, Dan. But you're going to give us more on that.
Well, England were dire. Absolutely shocking. And, it's just... Yeah, it was, I honestly think he did more defensively than offensively, which is kind of a bit...
It's something to think about, Dan, and the fact that everybody was pissed off that the United States had lost to Panama. But this kind of stuff happens in World Cup qualifying, because if you go and look at either the FIFA rankings or the far more dependable ELO rankings, the difference between those four nations, the U.S., the England's third, U.S. is 19th. I think Hungary is 42nd, and I think Panama is 56th. The difference is nominal, right? And so the U.S. losing at Panama seems lesser of an issue to me than England getting a draw against Hungary at Wembley.
But here's the thing about international windows, and it kind of... I saw a video of whatever show Hercules Gomez does with Sebastian Salazar.
I think it's unfortunately called The Kick Around.
No, it's like Football Americas or something like that.
Okay. They stole my show name.
Basically, Salazar was trying to use that loss as an excuse to rag on MLS and talk about, playing, is MLS at fault because however many started and this, that, and the other. Continuing on that conspiracy theory crap that's been going around. But the reality of the international window is, a less talented team is going to play up. They're going to want to bloody the nose of a more talented team. You don't know, you've got to take into account players being rested, players fatigued, players who are coming from a system to play in another system, because we all remember Oscar Pereira used to say, it takes 2 weeks to get acclimated into a system. Well, you do not have 2 weeks to get acclimated into a system before you start playing in an international break. There's just so many variables that go into it. And it's just, you should see these results, whether it's Hungary, grabbing a draw at Wembley, or it's Panama sort of stealing one over the US. That's part and parcel of the game.
Yeah, Hungary losing to Albania.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Has Acosta been playing for Honduras? I have not been paying attention, as they also lost to Jamaica amazingly at home last night.
I looked it up, and not really. He was a DMP versus Costa Rica. He did start versus Mexico and went 71 minutes, and then he was a DMP versus Jamaica. Against Costa Rica, I don't think he was even on the roster. So it does raise a red flag for me, however, that a player that's a DP for FC Dallas is now not a guaranteed starter for his country, no matter what his country is, but let alone, and no offense to anybody, Honduras, who's not a top-tier CONCACAF country anymore. They're a second-tier CONCACAF country, and he can't really get minutes or be a guaranteed starter there. And we've seen, for example, when he comes and goes to the national team from FC Dallas, for at least a game or two before he leaves and after he comes back, he's trash. So it's like it's contributing to the pile-on of some thoughts I'm building about where Brian Acosta should be next year.
He's definitely an example of that whole Oscar Pereira 2-week thing, because they have him playing 6, 8, or 10 any given game, and I mean, how do you come back and sort of adapt to your role again that quickly?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like there was a period of time, once upon a time, early in the 2021 FC Dallas season, we were all thinking, wow, where has this Brian Acosta been? He's playing fantastic, and it only took a little bit of time for that to evaporate, and he's kind of reverted back to the Brian Acosta that we were all frustrated by in the 2020 and 2019 seasons.
Yeah, first third of this season.
He's not hitting the moon anymore.
Yeah, first third of the season, he was the MVP of the team, and then he got called up, and he's been crap since then, basically.
Yeah. Which then leads us to the good guys' next game, which doesn't happen now until almost another week from now. It's Wednesday night, LAFC. And, Buzz, I guess the question is, who's going to get involved in that game? Will everybody be back from international schedules, and will they actually ask Ricardo Pepi to start after all that, or what are we looking for?
Well, this is the one place that I want to give FC Dallas a shout-out to, because they have influence on their own schedule. Last year, or at some point, Lucci talked to me about the fact that, particularly involving international windows, you can request whether you want to play or not play in particular ones. Now, at some point, you have to play during some of them because there's just too many games. But in this particular one, they did not play. And not only did they not play, they did not have a game this weekend. They specifically left this weekend open, and they don't play again until next Wednesday. So they left themselves almost an entire week. Now, is it possible there's some other event has made that happen, like something at the stadium? I mean, it could be a total accident. But I'm going to pretend like they really did it on purpose and left themselves a whole week from the last call-up, probably assuming that they would have somewhere between, Jesus, Paxton, Tanner, Pepi, if he got in. They've got, of course, Acosta, Schoon. Depending on how call-ups would have gone when you're making the schedule 7 or 8 months ago, you might have been missing 5, 6, 7 guys. So smart planning on their part that they're not playing until Wednesday. And that means that all the internationals should be back and all of them should be able to play. Now, I would not start Acosta because of he's crap when he comes back from an international. But Schoon and Pepi, I would expect to be able to start. Schoon, I bet, doesn't, because for some reason Marco doesn't seem to think he's a starter. But I would expect Pepi to be right in there.
Well, it does mean that because of that, the schedule now is pretty loaded. They will play 4 games in 10 days between the 20th and the 30th. Home against LAFC, on the road against the Galaxy, then back home for a doubleheader against RSL and Austin come to town. So that'll be an interesting trick to see how he gets everybody fit and ready and rotates players through those 4 games.
It's a shame. In a good season, that's a great little run-in to build some form ahead of playoffs.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Except that's not this season.
And only 5 games left to watch Ricardo Pepi play, and maybe Justin Shea.
Yeah, people keep. This is one of the great debates going on, both on and offline, which is when will Ricardo Pepi get sold? And everybody keeps trying to talk me into this idea that he's going to be here for the first half of next season and he'll get sold next summer. And I'm like, you're nuts. He is gone in January, almost certainly at this point, right?
Yeah, there's too much smoke now. Like before, you could have talked me into it, and I even suggested it's possible because teams have more money in our summer, when they're loading up for the beginning of the season, but in the end, it's like the kid is too hot. Like if he hadn't scored all these goals on the national team, I could have maybe bought the next summer theory. But now, people are gonna want to pay big money for him because he's as hot as you could get before the price goes up even more if he starts banging him in next year like he is now. Plus, FC Dallas will want to sell now because they would rather go ahead and get a replacement and have that person in all season and not have to deal with this next summer.
Yeah, I think there's two sides of that coin. Maybe both of them can be true, which is selling him in the winter does two things. It allows the Hunts to cash in on the best deal they can get and get that money and get the insurance of not losing him due to injury or form or something that may happen in the start of a 2022 season. And the other part of it is, I think, tactically or at least managerially a smart idea, which is both on and off the field with the roster and with the fan base, is while the fan base may be upset that you sold him off and they don't ever get to see him again in a Dallas shirt, I think that's better than having him for half a season and then losing him in the middle of a season and all of the fallout and impact that has both on and off the field. And that's why I almost think they have to sell him in January.
Yeah, think about it. What happens if he's rolling next year, scoring goals, and the team is better, and like you're in the playoff hunt, and all of a sudden you're selling your guy who's got 15 goals in the midway point, and your whole season comes off the rails. I mean, it's better to go ahead and try and figure out now how to live without him. I don't mean now. I mean this win over the next several months. Matter of fact, you should have started months and months ago trying to figure out, and Lucci told me they had, in fact, tried to figure out who you're going to replace him with next year, because it ain't Franco Jara. I mean, God forbid. Sorry. Can you imagine going into the season with Franco and Jesus? Not that we don't love Jesus, but Franco is the 9 and Jesus underneath. I mean, that's a conversation for later. But the point is that it's so much better for the organization to go ahead and go ahead and sell him now and get a replacement now. So you can spend the winter practicing and getting used to the new whatever it is and get it going and.
Well, and I also think there's a whole side story of that about who you're going to get to replace him in the first place. Now, is Jara's deal an option for another year, or he's locked in for another year?
My information, listen, I don't have this 100% concrete. I have it like 99% confidence, though, that it's a 3-year deal, because they're all 3 years. And plus, people that are inside the club said to me multiple times, going to have him next year, too. So that meant to me, without actually saying it outright, that means that he's under contract guaranteed. DP contracts are almost always guaranteed. You're always going to have to see him out. The Hunts aren't going to put on their big boy pants and buy him out. You're going to be stuck with him. He's going to be here. You can just sit him on the bench and tell him to go train with the academy or whatever, but he's going to get paid and he's going to be here. So they got to work around that in the sense. I mean, we all know that he's not going to be the answer to any questions. It's not going to be like, oh, let's play him now. No, that's just stop it. The problem is.
Well, the point I was trying to make, Buzz, is that they should be thinking about who they're going to get to replace Pepi, and I think that's easier done before the start of the season versus letting him go in July and hope that you can source somebody in that window and then getting that person integrated into the team before the playoff. All that stuff, it just seems to make so much more sense in a Pepi January sale.
100%, yeah. Now, there's less things available for you in the market to replace him, but
do you really think they're?
You're gonna have to. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna Jesus as a false 9? I mean, maybe that's the answer. Jesus false 9, Paxton underneath. I mean, that's totally possible. But I feel like organizationally, in discussing Pepi with the people in the organization, there seemed to be a vibe of we're gonna have to replace him, not we have the replacement. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know that certainly a new coach is going to factor in this. but at the same time not, because of the new way we think about things here, which is the TD-driven team now.
Yeah, but here's the other deal, Buzz. In terms of January or July and buying a guy, the Hunts love to sell their wares at North Park, but they buy their new wares at Town East Mall. So the difference in those 2 months in terms of shopping for a new striker at Town East Mall are pretty minimal at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, keep in mind, too, that it's not just about the salary cap. It's about the real budget, and the Hunts are paying Franco Jara $3 million a year. So the real budget is already pretty maxed. So they're going to try and replace Pepi with a $500,000 player. Is my prediction.
Yeah. And on top of all of it, we still haven't even talked about the fact that you got to do all of this while you're trying to replace Luchi Gonzalez and bring in a new coach. And if we're working under the assumption that it's somebody that's not currently within the family and system, how does that change this whole story?
Yeah, and actually I want to hear specifically from Dan about something in this, because I think there's a completely new mentality here we've never seen before. And I know you've gotten the same information, Peter, same vibe, in that everyone I talk to now mentions, when I talk about the coach, they don't talk about Dan Hunt. They talk about Zanata. And they talk about how Zanata's hired, Zanata's doing this, Zanata's doing that. What does Zanata think? So now the only people that really know are Dan and Zanata. But everyone now, and I mean intimately involved with the team or even inside the team, they're all waiting for just Zanata to get his guy. Now, whoever his guy is that somebody from South America, or is it somebody from, the Hunt internal circle? I don't know. But the difference is, and I did my burn on this today a little bit, is the idea that this is the first time now here where we've seen this 100%, I feel like, 100% technical director-driven team where he's getting the players, he's buying all the ingredients, as a certain professional football coach used to say, that he's building the team, and then he's going to go get a coach to come in and coach this team. And if you can't do it, I'm going to get another coach. I'm going to get another coach the year after. I'm going to get another coach the year after. So the reason I wanted Dan to get in on this one is because I don't know if that's a thing that happens in Europe, for example. It for sure is the Brazilian, Argentine kind of way. So to us here, it's totally different. It's never been like this before. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, in Europe, it's more, you kind of have your objectives laid out, right? Like, hey, we've got young guys, we want to play them, we want to play an attractive style, we want to play attacking football. We bought the pieces for this, come in and arrange them however you see fit. Now, is Andre, going to be dictating to people that he's interviewing, right, I want you to play a 4-2-3-1. I want this. I want very specific things. Or is it a case of, maybe he has a coach that he's, already got lined up for it, and he's going to be buying pieces with that coach's preferred system in mind. It's going to be really interesting, and just, kind of as you said, how this is nothing like anything we've seen before here in Dallas.
There was an interesting back and forth on Twitter earlier this week with our friend Cranks, who does the great videos, the individual kind of single player video reviews of that Buzz you share every once in a while, and he's a good guy. And he was going back and forth with somebody who is Brazilian-American or American-Brazilian or something like that, who has some understanding of football in Brazil and history down there, that was giving some feedback on his perspective of Zanata as a talent evaluator and a seller and what that means for FC Dallas. And his tweet was, no doubt he knows how to discover talent and then help develop players to get to Europe. Besides the FC Dallas players, Neymar, Arthur, Felipe Anderson, and many others show he's talented. Does this help those teams win championships? Not really, but that may not be the primary goal. And I did find that very interesting and telling in relationship to how we already have kind of slotted Zanata as a guy who showed up and admitted to everybody he didn't know anything about Major League Soccer. And that's not really his job anyway. His job is to help the Hunts make money selling kids, which he's done very successfully. That all ends up with the ongoing narrative that he's kind of the current Dan and Clark golden boy, because who else is, baking up money at this rate? It's not the sales team, right? It's not the marketing team. It's not the media team. It's this guy who's making this company money. And if he wants to be the guy to hire a new coach, maybe Dan and Clark are like, maybe we should let him do it.
Yeah, I certainly think any new GM would get a chance to hire his guy. But I also 100% agree. And we weren't sure at first what kind of TD we were getting. And it's only over time, as we've watched these deals happen, we've watched things, and not just with FC Dallas, but with North Texas too. Now, some parts of them are run as different organizations, but in a lot of ways they're not, right? So we're seeing like the North Texas deals with teams in Portugal or whatever, when Andre is going over there rather than going to Canada with the team. And there's now 3 or 4 players going multiple directions. And we're looking at these deals like Philippe, these loan deals with a high buy price that we instantly all thought, oh, that's a buy to sell. Right? And even like Ricarte, which is like because he'd had some knee injuries in the past, he never really had gotten a chance in Europe. But maybe this was a stepping stone kind of opportunity. Come in here, and if you dominate, then we can flip you up again. Like, again, a guy 28 that has a loan to buy kind of deal. Freddie Vargas, loan to buy kind of deal. It's like there's a whole lot of these happening in the club. And just the behavior of the deals under Zanata have led us, and I think, not to speak for you guys, but I think you would agree, to 100% believe that Zanata is mostly here as this buy and sell and make the team money as his main number one mandate. Because how many times have we talked about with the Hunts? The most important thing, regardless of what they actually say, is the long-term survivability and profit-making ability to keep this team afloat and running as it builds value over the years like their NFL team did. That's what they care about more than they care about the actual minute-to-minute winning, right? So Zanata, it seems to us, I'm sure you guys would agree, clearly, obviously, is about that pipeline of players and making money more than he is winning a championship.
Oh, definitely. You look at his career in South America, and it seemed to be his winning season would be the first season when he's still got the remnants of the old team, and then you'd start seeing all the big deals happen. Obviously Fernando Clavier was also pretty fond of those try before you buy kind of deals, but I can't recall too many 2-year loans with an option to buy like we've seen with Ricarte and Felipe.
Well, it will continue to be the most interesting storyline I think the three of us discuss for the ongoing next few months until they actually name a successor to Lucci. And I'm more confused than ever before as to who that's going to end up being. And I at the beginning when this whole thing started, I thought it was a very clear answer. I thought it was one of two people. I thought it was Marco or I thought it was Eric Quill. And now, just blindly throw a dart on a wall, and I think you probably have about as good a chance at being right about that.
Yeah, it depend based on what they said. If you believe the idea was make the playoffs for Marco, then obviously that's missed. I'm not so sure that's what it really was. I think it was more fix the defense. So your money may vary on whether he's done that or not. So I don't know that he's worked himself into the thing. Quill, I think, would have to make the playoffs and make a deep run in order to really prove anything like as he's the guy. I've had one or two people mention to me, and I can't put a whole lot of validity in them, but it is out there, this whole, Zanata's already got his guy. It's already done and lined up, and it's been done and lined up. It's just waiting. So, we'll find out based on how quickly anything executes and who it turns out to be, which one of those things is really true. None of them do I have anything concrete to pass on other than just we watch and observe and we know how the things have worked traditionally, and maybe there's this X factor this time. So it continues to be fascinating, even though there's still 5 games left in the season. I think it's going to be an interesting 5 games.
Yeah, the name that popped up last night that I had not considered and thought, oh my gosh, that would be a great one, is the coach for El Salvador, Hugo Perez. who, may end up being on the hot seat for them. And I think it was Matt Doyle who tweeted out he was hoping he'd see him in MLS. And I thought, ooh, that's an interesting one. That would be one I could get behind a little bit.
Oh, no, I'm a huge Hugo Perez fan. Yeah, have been for literally since he was a national team player. That's how old I am. So, I'm on board with that hire for sure if they want to go that way. I have no idea if Zanata knows him or not, but he'd be great.
One thing I did notice, Zanata's got a habit, or he had a habit at least, of his 3,500 hires in Brazil, all for 6 months each, of giving guys their first head coaching role.
Yeah.
Yeah, not ideal.
Well, here's the difference, though. The appetite for switching out coaches and paying out contracts is probably standard fare in Brazil. It is absolutely not the run of course for Dan and Clark Hunt.
No, but if you want to buy the give a guy a shot first head coaching job, unless you count USL as the first head coaching job, that does lean into both Marco and Quill, or Lucene, but not Chewy. He's been a head coach many times before, so.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the guys that are in-house now, doesn't fit into Jason Kreis, multiple head coaching jobs, for that.
Well, meanwhile, back in Arlington, North Texas Soccer Club has continued their season, unbeknownst to me. Sorry, I've still not gone to a game there in 2 seasons. What is going on with the little kids?
Well, this is actually more about next year than the little kids now. They're still right on the cusp of the playoffs. They got a few games left to try and get in. They don't hold the tiebreaker versus Tucson, so that'll make it tough. But here's the thing about next year. So we already know for sure they're going to MLS 2, which is going to be interesting because I'm starting to get information coming out of various places because they're already talking to a lot of times kids that are in the academy now or kids that are in college now about how it's going to work because they're trying to tell them and their parents, no matter how old they are, even if they're in college, their parents are still involved usually in these discussions, or their agents or hypothetical agents or whatever. So some stuff is starting to trickle out. And it looks like there's a kind of contract that you can sign. Basically, you sign a long-term deal with FC Dallas, but the first 2 years of it, or whatever, 1 year or 2 year, are with North Texas. So essentially, their facility, there's even a name for it. It's called
a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, kind of. It's called an LDL, apparently, is what I'm hearing. And I'm guessing maybe that means like lower division loan contract or something. And effectively, it means that FC Dallas will be able to stash players with North Texas on FC Dallas contracts at a higher rate than they are now, and it'll have these baked-in contract elevations as you move from North Texas to the real homegrown deal to a senior roster contract, all theoretically built into your contract as you go forward. And it may also, that knowledge, if Dallas knew that was the direction things were going, and I would assume they would have some level of knowledge, may sort of explain a couple of the home runs that we've seen signed lately that to me were kind of missed. Like, why is he doing that? That's crazy. It may make some more sense with some of the players we've seen them sign to North Texas even. So there's basically some news here, and I think it's important to chew on in terms of big picture, that there's going to be a greater level of contractual integration. And that's really important because how many times have I talked about they're missing out on this tier of player coming out of the academy? That's a problem, that these guys that are going to these low end European deals, these tier 2 guys that are passing up on contracts because it's not good enough yet with North Texas. And the example that's the most poignant example is Tanner Tessman. Tanner was like, no thanks, I pass, for like 2 years, up until finally they thought he was good enough for the legit homegrown deal. And then he's like, okay, I'll take it. So like there's a totally different tier of player now that you can appeal to with this larger contract. And that's a fundamental change from the way North Texas has operated before. And I think that's pretty important in terms of the long-term health and viability of this franchise, because we've talked a lot about the tier 1 guys. Your Pepis are gone at 18, 19, 20. Reynolds gone, right? Richards gone. How do you keep that mid-tier guys like Brandon Cervania's maybe that can be like a 10, 15-year player in MLS? Those guys are the ones that you maybe aren't signing at 15. Maybe you want to sign them at 18 and have these multi-tiered things. So it's a shift in the organization, and I think it's really in the league, but also this organization. I think it's really important.
One of the related topics I've been keeping my eye on, because I have to assume this is like a new Collin County, City of Frisco industry, which is player representative and legal advice. Because there is now, for the first time ever, there is a bucket of players who are in these positions that desperately need people that know what they're doing when it comes to negotiating these contracts and these deals with the Hunts, and people that give them smart career advice about this stuff, because I'm going to guess 95% of them's parents have never had to deal with this before, but their careers are on the line. And when you start talking about this type of deal where it's like, well, sign with us now long term, and it's kind of an FC Dallas deal, but the first 2 years of this lower level deal, man, that language is just so complicated and convoluted. And I mean, you think you've signed an FC Dallas deal only to find out that you didn't play well your first year and they can cut you and you get nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that is what the contract is, but my point is that I have to assume there is now an avalanche of lawyers or sports agents or representatives just flooding Collin County, running around trying to offer their services to these families and trying to help cover their bases. Oh,
for sure. Well, one thing is that FC Dallas bakes college into all their contracts for these kids that are skipping college, like both North Texas and FC Dallas. They've confirmed that. It's through the league's deal, which was Southern New Hampshire and now is I don't remember who it is. Right? It's somebody better. Is it somebody better than Southern New Hampshire? I can't remember who it is now.
Is it like an Arizona State or something?
Yeah, it's now like a full university. So like that's great. I mean, they used to use Texas Tech a long time ago before they had a league deal. But the point is, at least that's in there. But you're right, Peter, 100%. For maybe, I first started hearing about it maybe 5 years ago. And the better you are as a kid, obviously, the more you have these agents swimming around. And as long as you don't sign a contract, you're actually okay. If I'm understanding the rules correctly, don't double check me on this. If you're a kid out there listening, you're okay to talk to them because they will give you basically free advice. These agents and these representatives they'll give you free advice because they then want you to sign with them when you do sign. So they're, so if you're Corcoran, who we should talk about, by the way, in the next couple of weeks.
That's exactly who I was thinking about. Was Matthew Corcoran, which is a weird one because his parents come from a soccer background, so I'm not sure he's the greatest example. No, he's a bad example in that he doesn't need the advice. He's a good example in that there were a lot of guys swarming around him. But again, we're going to come back to him in the next couple of weeks when there's some things happening. But anybody that's in the academy level, like the top half of the academy level, is going to have people floating around, and occasionally you get a guy like Knight Pickering who's already signed with an agent, or you get a guy who signs when he shouldn't, like a kid a couple of years ago who should not have signed with an agent and did, and then nothing happened for him, and then he was basically out of soccer. So you have to be very careful with what you're doing. Be very careful with the advice you take. Make sure you really trust who you're listening to, because these guys are agents. They do want to make money off of you. But they are going to offer you free advice if you're at this level of play. If you're the top of the academy, or even in the middle of the academy, probably they're going to come sniffing around of various levels of ability and quality. I can't tell you any of them how good they are. You'll just have to do that research on your own. But they for sure are going to come and tell you how to do it for free, wanting to get you when you sign. And that's how it works. Like everybody that you've seen sign a homegrown was getting advice from some level of agent before they signed. For sure.
It was the University of South Carolina, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's much better than Southern New Hampshire. No offense, Southern New Hampshire, but South Carolina is better than that.
Anything else we should know about North Texas before we move on?
Well, specifically, Nkosi and Tafari, and Eddie Manjoma both played with them again this week, like Khalil Makar and Nicky Hernandez do all the time, which points to two things. One, love that FC Dallas used the club when their team wasn't playing. That's great. But two, that tells you where Tafari is in the current staff's thinking.
I am so confused. I feel
Right?
like I know nothing about this club
I
or
know.
this team or soccer when I hear that news. I was like, what?
Right.
What are my eyes? What are my eyes missing, and my brain digesting and turning into opinions about a player that a coach is not that is obviously in conflict with the guy that really should know what he's doing. I don't get it. I'm totally lost.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't. Look, I applaud the usage of the team, and I can sort of get the idea that like Nkosi hadn't played in a couple of games. Sure, let's send him down and get some minutes. But man, I don't know, man, because that says to him, we think you need development still. When I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, I thought he was out playing everybody else as a center back. Now, Majoma definitely needs development. I thought he should have been down there earlier than this. Elmet Card needs more development. Nick Hernandez absolutely needs more development. So you now lumped Tafari in with those guys. I think that's bad. On one hand, organizationally, I love the concept. I don't like this particular usage of it. And again, that should, we're like, well, why did he not start over Matt Hedges, or why did he not start over Brisson? Dude, they don't definitely think of him as a starter if they're sending him to North Texas.
Yeah, I don't get it, and I need a stats nerd like maybe Armin or somebody to flesh out for me what it is that I'm missing that is bad in Nkosi's game that my eyes aren't. Because I like I said, I've said it 1,000 times, I just don't get it. And maybe there's one of those video tactician guys or a stats nerd that will go, no, actually, if you look at the data, Peter, he's not doing this very well, and the other guys do that really well, and then I'll feel better about it.
The downside of that too, though, Peter, is that
I don't think that exists. Buzz.
Is he has recovery space to recover from mistakes. He's a player that has a huge future ahead of him, probably. And with the team as bad as it is, I would want to invest playing time in him rather than chase this mythical, impossible playoff spot. So, then again, the coach was told to fix the defense, and Nkosi was starting when they were bleeding 3 goals a game. So,
And by the way, I should say as a disclaimer, I mean, I use the term stats nerd and specifically targeted at Armin, and nothing but love and respect.
Oh, yeah, love that kid. Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right, I do want to bring up the other news we found out last week, off the field news about FC Dallas, that they had posted a job listing. And it caught us all off guard when FC Dallas is now out shopping for a vice president of marketing.
Well,
I'll take your silence as stunning.
Well, the big takeaway for me was that they are actually using like an outside search company, and to me, I was hoping that means they're trying to elevate the search base and get like a real guy, and maybe it means they're willing to this time finally spend a little more money. Maybe am I totally wrong? I could be wrong.
I my big takeaway was I thought that the job description was really oddly worded. It included a bunch of duties and responsibilities that didn't seem befitting of a vice president title, which maybe is just an indication of just how small the crew is, and maybe if you're going to take this job, you're going to get the title, but you're also going to have to do a lot of shit work too. But I think the part of it that really bummed me out, or the part that I thought was just the most face palming, was the fact that it said something. The very last line of the application is a interest or fascination in soccer is preferred.
I don't like the word preferred there. I would have thought that should be mandatory.
Well, I mean, we know from their hiring history it's been optional.
Well, no, obviously. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that are in key positions that have no soccer background or even know anything about the sport. I mean, I kind of expected that. I don't know. I just Dan, you actually had some really interesting perspective because your wife is in marketing and has a title similar to this, and she seemed to have some interesting reaction to the job listing.
There was a face palm, a couple of chuckles. Basically, it's weird because it says it's a VP level, but it asks for a bachelor's rather than like an MBA with a marketing focus or something like that.
Yeah, I thought that was really strange.
There was a lot of overly wordy, overly repetitive in itself, and like you say, a lot of the tasks it lists are things that you'd expect to delegate out, and the marketing team is kind of small there. You know, they have a marketing manager, a couple of partnership marketing people. They did have a grassroots team. I don't know if they still have that. They'll obviously have, the odd intern, but it's still. I'm sure there's going to be someone who is way overqualified that applies for that, and then they get really disappointed when they get offered 30 grand.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, it probably is a six-figure gig based on the fact that it's a VP title. It's not a $200,000 gig.
It should be, but we also know from FC
the hunts
that they
and
underpay
sports.
and over-expect with a lot of their positions.
Sports, as a general rule, are not jobs that you take for big salaries. I mean, that's just kind of common knowledge. But again, let me also be fair, and I want to read the line exactly. The last line of the application or the job listing is passion for and knowledge of soccer preferred. The line before it is, bullet point, fluency in Spanish, a plus.
The thing that worries me about that is, right, you think about, marketers have specialist areas, right?
Yep.
Shouldn't you be aiming at people? I mean, shouldn't you specify like knowledge of sports?
Well, funny you mentioned
a background
that, Dan.
in sports needs to be.
That's the third to last bullet point in the qualification, skills, and education requirements. Hands-on experience in sports and entertainment preferred.
That shouldn't be preferred. That should be, required.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem you have, right? Your marketing department. This is what we've called him out for so many times. Your previous marketing VP, I say VP, he was a director that eventually got VP, came from the Orlando Magic. Your current marketing director came from the Orlando Magic. This was pre-Orlando City. Their only competition for entertainment dollars was Disney, which isn't really competition for entertainment dollars. So you need to have someone that comes from a competitive landscape where you are used to being the fifth wheel, because that's what they are. They're behind the stars, really. You need to be from a place where the brand isn't necessarily known, because, let's be honest, most people who know the FC Dallas name think it's a youth soccer club. A lot of them don't realize it has an adult team, let alone a youth system that just happens to have a professional team. So, I mean, it's just what they're asking and what they're going to get just isn't going to be up to scratch. You need to have... there are some very specific demands with that job.
Yeah, and I think that's my big takeaway of the job listing is I don't know anybody that actually is that I can't think of a experienced marketer in this particular space that will read this and go, "Oh, I need this job. I must have this job." Because the job listing itself would be reason to shade away from applying for it just based on the way that it's worded. If I'm a well-experienced, highly successful marketing person in the sports industry, and also if you are that person, you probably also already possess an opinion and understanding of the history of this club's practices towards marketing and their kind of avoidance of all those types of things. I just don't think anybody really qualified would want this job, and maybe that's why they limited the requirement on education to a bachelor's degree and not a master's or a doctorate, and in some way. So that to me is probably the most anybody really needs to know about it.
I think the thing you've also got to consider, and maybe some listeners are very well aware of this and others aren't, is there is a very large yes man culture at FC Dallas.
Sure.
I mean, someone's going to, and we've known people that have come in with big bright ideas, and it hasn't necessarily fit the agenda or what's going on, and they've found their time at Toyota Stadium to be very short. But
look, if they hire titles and degrees and all that stuff mean nothing to me if they find somebody that A, has a well-documented history of marketing a soccer club and an understanding of soccer culture. And if they bring somebody in from another Major League Soccer team that was successful in doing A, B, C, and D in that particular market, and they've got a high school degree, I don't care. I just want somebody that really understands the game, the sport, and the culture, and can help successfully convert some of the stuff they've been missing out on for the last 15 years.
Actually, the point I was trying to make there is a perfect example is they did exactly that when they brought in Nicole Tillett from the Portland Timbers, who had been their fan relations person.
Who's they? Dallas?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then they handcuffed her, so she can't really do the job.
Yeah, I remember when they hired her, they had a whole video about her coming in.
Like, she's brilliant. The supporters groups absolutely love her. She's really receptive. She will fight like tooth and nail for them. But it still goes through other people at FC Dallas who say no.
Well, the fact that they placed the application, I think, is I would like to believe is an indication that maybe the idea that they need to market this thing differently is there. Like, but when you tell me the story that they hire somebody like her and they don't let her do anything, just is like, okay, well whatever.
It kind of goes back to the coaching stuff, right? We talk about Zanata, we talk about change, but then we talk about, is this what the Hunts do? Is this really the FC Dallas way?
Look, I don't want to bum everybody out, but I will just point out that last night in the biggest game so far in World Cup qualifying, there were 3 players on the field that came from the FC Dallas Academy, one that currently plays for the senior team, one that plays in the Bundesliga, and one that plays for one of the most storied Italian clubs in the world. And I promise you, next Wednesday night, that stadium will be half full.
Yeah, and when you think about it, there's guys all over.
Yes, Italy, sorry.
Just outside of the pool where you have your Reynolds, your Tessmans, your Jesus, your Paxton, there's plenty of guys that are right outside the pool too. It's like you can foresee a day in 5 years where you could get darn close to like 2/3 of the team could be FC Dallas on any given game. It's crazy to think of, and yet nobody cares. It's amazing. And all I could
two on the bench as well.
Yeah, all I could think of when I was watching, when I was reading that marketing thing was, it reminded me, the idea that there wasn't the NBA listed, there wasn't, a lot of things spoke to me in a person that's like going to make a jump up to this level from a lower level. It reminded me of the coaching searches this team's always have. And they always say, we talk to people that were with Champions League stuff on their resume. We talk to people with all this winning experience on their resume. And I guarantee you, well, maybe I shouldn't guarantee, but I really believe that that's true, and I really believe that they then tell them how much the job pays, and that person laughs and hangs up, and you end up in the end with the former coach's previous assistant being promoted and being the head coach. Just like this marketing job, it's going to be somebody young making a jump up, and more than likely, in my mind, it's going to happen again with this coaching search. Zanata, if he does have one of his guys from wherever, is going to expect to make X amount of dollars, and is going to go, oh, by the way, get paid $300K, and they're going to go, never mind, and we're going to end up with Ferruzzi or Quill. Not that I don't like Ferruzzi or Quill, but that's what's going to happen, probably.
Well, not to jump back a little bit, but just imagine if LAFC, Atlanta United, Portland, or Seattle had all of that talent from their club on the U.S. men's national team.
Oh, man.
Could you imagine how those clubs would handle that from a marketing perspective locally? I mean, forget what they would do in terms of running it on the rest of the league and social media and everything, and making noise about it. Just imagine how they would manage that and how they would direct their focus in highlighting that locally.
Well, from 2 of them, you already see so much from Atlanta and Seattle, just based around Roldan and Miles Robinson.
Yeah. Well, again, that just accentuates my point, which is it's not one guy. It's on this particular game, it was 3 guys. And I'm not even half convinced that they didn't go back to accepting Weston McKennie as one of their own until the league kind of foisted it on him when he happened to be in town a few months ago, So, screw it. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm so burned out by it. It just drives me nuts.
I think everyone's all said the same thing about like marketing FC Dallas. You just need to say, these are the guys. Come see the next guys. Come see the current guys. But instead it's always, hey, Tim Howard's in town. Yeah, he's going to check out a titty bar later.
Well, you know
on.
what? To be fair, Dan, I actually saw a Pepi, America's striker, on one of the video billboards on Central Expressway the other day.
Nice.
In advertising a game. And I thought, okay, well, there's an idea, except I saw it that one time in that one space on that one billboard, and I didn't see it anywhere else. I didn't see it, I hadn't heard it on any radio commercials. I didn't see it in any TV commercials. I didn't see it anywhere else. The only other place I've seen the America Striker idea and premise was by the social media guy in the starting lineups
Yeah.
graphic.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of that's a big thing. Is going to be like, are they going to give the new marketing person a budget, because the previous ones never had one?
No.
Yeah, we talk about advertising, and that's great. That's a fantastic example of what they need to do, but they need to do it so however many million people see it, not so that 35 cars drive past it and then it changes and it's never seen again.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Don't be sad.
Yeah.
Ricardo Pepi's going to play for your team on Wednesday and score some goals.
That'll be fun. He's fun.
He is fun. Well, somehow we squoze almost an hour plus out of a week with no game. I don't know how we did it, but congratulations, Dan. Good work on your part.
Thanks. Complaining is our national sport after all.
It is, and we've learned well from you. I do think, Dan. All right, Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is your source for all national team from the U.S. and other countries, FC Dallas, and international club gear. New arrivals include the new PSG third jersey. I think they've got the Messi nameplate as well. This week is also the limited edition Pepi El Tren scarves. El Tren, excuse me. I was going all Austin in dual languages, which are in stock now and nice. And because you're a Third Degree listener, you get 25% off your purchase when you use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. So thank you, Dan, for your time and interjections and effort, and thank your wife for her insight as well, please, sir.
Thank you, and I will do.
And Buzz, sorry you didn't go to training today due to the rain, but hopefully we'll get to see the team again sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully so. And you should go watch North Texas play.
Okay. Anybody got a ticket I could use?
Yeah, we'll get you one.
All right, awesome. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We'll speak to you next week after the game in L.A. or against L.A., and we'll do that in another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Choo-choo for the last 5 times.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.